So let's turn to page 5, or bottom page 4 and 5. We reflected on, we're going to finish up this week on forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a lot of things. Page 4, bottom page 4, what forgiveness is, it means to set free. There's extra handouts over here if you forgot yours, anybody? Or don't have it. To set free, release the need for retribution, vengeance, or punishment. So you can still be healing from wounds done to you from your past and have forgiven. It's just that if you have an acute need and emotional resentment, those are signs that the emotion that you need to be paying attention to, if you still feel it, is resentment. Resentment, anger, rage, those are feelings that are associated with retribution or vengeance. And that's the feeling. But woundedness, like I get sad when I think about it sometimes, that doesn't mean you haven't forgiven. It means you have a wound. So there's particular emotions you want to be on the lookout for, and I say that at the bottom of page 4. Forgiveness of other humans is the process by which we heal emotional and psychological wounds that have occurred by releasing emotional resentment and anger that demands punishment or restitution. I know that's wordy, but that's why I italicize it. You print it out for you there. Top of page 5, we talk about forgiving yourself, forgiving God. You can't forgive yourself, but we can use that loosely to mean to process your own disappointment with yourself. And that's legitimate. Many people need therapy to help. I'm serious about this. Not give themselves off the hook, but to process the sense of, man, I failed in what I wanted to do. And, yes?
Sorry, you said forgiveness of God.
Yeah, that's the top of page 5. Then there's forgiving God.
But you don't. I'm trying to think, like, how do you forgive God when He does you wrong?
You don't. That's why I say there. Thank you for that. So on page 5, you said, how do I forgive God when He doesn't do wrong? The answer is you don't. That's right. So what people do will say that expression, forgiving God. And so technically speaking, you don't forgive yourself. Technically speaking, you don't forgive God because you're not God. Only God forgives sins. Having said that, just like with forgiving yourself, I'm perfectly fine in an idiomatic expression of forgiving God in the sense that I say, grieve and accept the fact that God didn't do what I thought He would. There is a biblical word for that, and that is being offended at God. That's exactly what Jesus calls it in Matthew 11. I think around verse 7. He tells John the Baptizer, blessed is the one who's not offended at me. So we can say, who doesn't feel I need to forgive me, or whatever. The point is, they're offended at God. That's and I say that right here. So many people refuse to let go of the resentment they have toward God. They're offended. And I bet many people who refuse to talk about Jesus, Christianity. In fact, not long ago, I think it was Brock and some others, and maybe David Danny and some others were down in Link, and they were talking about all the wounds and stuff that God done to me. Usually it's not just God, it's the church, for Him who represents God. And they're mad, they're offended, and they won't step foot inside of the church. And I say to encourage you, fully accept the fact that God is utterly free from any external compulsion. God's ways are not ours, not yours. His timing is not ours, it's not yours. His will is not determined by what you want. And most importantly, God is good and can be trusted. Well, there's a lot more there, but when we get offended, we're offended. Let's be real about this. We're offended because God didn't do what we wanted Him to do. We had an expectation for God to do something. He didn't do it, now I'm mad at Him. So we don't need to forgive Him because you're not God. But you do need to process the emotional and psychological pain you experienced when you had an expectation for God. It's a little, in my view, it's different being offended at what God didn't do or did do, you think He did, versus another person. And even in the realm of people life, people hold different, we all do, we hold people different levels of esteem. Of course, just another fancy word for value. But we look up to them differently. For a lot of people, they're much more devastated. It can take more years for people to get over when a pastor has hurt them than when, say, a neighbor has hurt them. They just or a church person has versus a pagan. They have a different expectation. Why would a church hurt? We just have levels, whether we thought about it or not, we typically do. Well, that's certainly the case with God. Higher expectations. And that's the case. Now, I would say I have a lot more to say about that, but I'm not going to at this point. But the bottom line is, He doesn't answer to us. And the biblical text over and over and over makes the case that he can be trusted, therefore trust him. I'm doing right in the middle of a sermon series on trusting God, having faith. And so if you haven't heard them, you may not care, don't worry about it. But if you do, if you struggle ever with having faith or trusting God, I hope you'll listen to it. The first 2 sermons are on. This 3rd week is the last week on it, and I'm reflecting on various ways to increase our trust in him. Trusting is a good thing. It's not blind trust. We have a reason to trust him. Like, I hope my children will trust me. I'm good. I have the best interest. Even when they don't understand, I sure hope they'll trust me. And this is what he says in Matthew 11:6. Blessed is the one who's not offended. Nothing in Christianity teaches that Christians are exempt from immense suffering and sadness, and Jesus even told us to expect it. But I think one of the dominant views of the modern person is the belief that God is morally obligated, or to say it this way, God has the moral duty to guarantee my pleasure in life.
I never thought that.
I've never thought
Oh, you never thought that? Good for you. Good for you. I experienced
I don't
that
agree with it, but I'm sure
all
people say
the time with people online, on YouTube, amongst
Yeah.
atheists and skeptics, because the absolute, and I won't go there, I'll get worked up. The absolute number one argument against the existence of God by atheists is evil and suffering.
Yeah.
And the only way that's an argument, I think it's a horribly stupid argument. And I'll
Agreed.
later on tell you another reason why. I did a whole series on morality.
Yeah.
But the main reason is because for that to be an argument, you must assume or believe that God has the moral duty to make sure we don't suffer. So it's like God's in our moral obligation. He shouldn't cause that, but he does allow it, or shouldn't allow it, and he does. Therefore, he broke his own rules, he's immoral. That's silly nonsense. Why would God have a moral obligation to make sure I'm happy and fat all the time? This is, or live a long, prosperous life. And see, we always define that. But that, because of that belief system, and then they have to go through suffering, they go, I'm out of here. And this is not uncommon with new baby Christians. No matter how old they are, and it doesn't matter how long in the church they've been, it does not matter. One of the signs of immaturity is that belief. When you grow up in Christianity, and I mean not go to church, I mean this in a technical sense. When you're maturing in the Christian faith and you're more and more like Jesus, that becomes a belief you might have held a long time ago, but you're past all that. You fully accept, just as Jesus said, you will have troubles. And as James can say, consider all joy. Because I'm telling you it's going to happen. And that may offend you right now because everyone's offended at everything. I'm okay with that. Because that's truth. And one of the most devastating things is that belief. It has turned more people than I've ever turned them away from God to suffering. The second most common thing that turns people away is Christians. Okay, page 5. Why? It's just a reality. So I'm trying to encourage you. I really am trying to encourage you.
Yeah.
You don't forgive God, but you might need to process the pain of expectation. This is legit. I prayed for so-and-so, they got cancer, they still died. I prayed for my son not to go to Colin Blank. I prayed for her not to walk out of me and it still happened. I prayed, and we can have broken hearts like, God, I thought you were good. Why didn't you do it? No. And it's a legitimate thing to be able to process that pain. Yes, ma'am. And I'll move on. Yeah.
But it's like that song. I never promised you a rose garden. God never promised us a rose garden. You know, even if we do everything He asks us to do, even if we're the perfect Christian, we're still going to have pain in your life. We're still going to have heartbreak. We're still going to have death. Life is not perfect.
Yeah.
We just live it to the best of our ability, I think, and do the best we can for ourselves and for others.
And so life is not perfect. We do the best we can. In all fairness, the usual response is, yeah, but Jesus said, if you pray and believe and have faith, I will answer prayer, you move mountains, and on and on. I'll have responses to that. The point is, for a lot of devout Christians, they have Bible verses in their mind which supports the belief that that should not have happened. I follow the formula just right, and that shouldn't have happened. Elaine went to maybe literal. Maybe we can talk about maybe exegesis later. And that's a good point, but I'm afraid I will bog myself down. But very quickly, I remember, this is real. Elaine went to a funeral one time of a chief of charismatic Pentecostal church. And there's a couple that stood up there around the podium and they were giving their talk and they were crestfallen. I don't understand. We prayed for Bob to get better and he didn't, he died. They were just devastated. In that world, in that denomination, you're told it doesn't matter what, as long as you have enough faith, there are two more gathered, as long as you declare it together. And they were devastated. I think that devastation was based on their belief. The belief is false. But I don't blame them for being so sad, because that's the belief they had. And that's what I'm trying to challenge right now. If that belief is in you at all, for whatever reason, I'm encouraging and suggesting that that's all false belief. I'm with you. I almost said Dan had his hand up, so go ahead.
Oh, David, I think you're on an important point here, and I don't want us to go too far past it. Listen, the same thing that people say about name it and claim it, have faith, and your prayer will be answered. You're poor, just claim your wealth. It's yours already. It's promised. If you're sick, just claim your health. It's yours already. Just pray, and it's yours. The same people will say that about relationships. Parents, you're not getting along with your kids, just claim the healthy relationship. Spouses, you're not getting along, just claim the relationship. And they almost put the burden on the person that's suffering from this broken relationship to feel guilty that now they don't have enough faith to fix it. But in my own experience, it seems to me that you can forgive somebody even if they still want to be your enemy. But to move back together in a reconciliation, you need both parties cooperating. If they don't want to reconcile, that's not going to happen, and God's not going to violate their free will to force it. That wouldn't be real.
If you're not familiar, there's a whole thing called the Word of Faith movement.
Yes.
It's very popular, particularly in Pentecostal circles, and it's almost the only be represented on TV.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes it around the world all the time is there's a real power in the words themselves. If you claim whatever, based on my interpretation of the New Testament and the Bible, and certainly the teaching of Jesus, that's an absolute abject travesty and false nonsense. But it sets people up for failure. If I just claim it, it'll happen. I've had people say that, I just claim that my bills will be paid. Okay? God bless you. You see, I can't remember one single character in the Bible didn't have some kind of problems. Well, we could list some. We have, like some of the disciples, they're just disciples, but they're almost little characters. We don't know what happened. But in general, it's true. The pattern is, and to be more precise, put another point on that is, Jesus suffered. Paul suffered. So, and that's always, in my understanding, that's the measure of success.
Mary herself.
Yeah, Mary, right?
She suffered.
She suffered.
So the disciples suffered because of Jesus and whatnot.
Right, the sadness, the loss of we would surmise that,
Even though they were saying, no, you won't die.
Right, right.
Can't make it done without a lot of pressure.
Can't make it done without a lot of pressure. That's right. That's what I tell my wife all the time. Stay to be married. You to be pregnant. I'm telling you, by the end of this, I'll make you done. Anybody else?
And how does that go?
And how does that go? Well, she didn't come tonight, so she's not feeling well. That's what we tell people. Yes, ma'am.
She said, I always say, God, your will.
Amen. So you always pray that God's will be done.
Yeah.
I think that's what Christians should do. And I think we should do that because Jesus himself did that.
That's right.
If Jesus said, not my will but yours, it seems to me that we should do the same thing. And I know this passage about prayer, and we can talk about it sometime if you want, or Spencer will tell you after what he thinks. Middle page 5, just make sure it's why? So forgiving yourself, you can't, but I get the point. Forgiving God, you can't, but I get the point. And these are legitimate things to be concerned about. So that's the what. Forgiveness is not those things, and then what it is. Now, like I told you, it's the what, why, and how. As we did with grief, now with forgiveness. So here's the why. Why should we forgive? And I want us to look up some Bible verses. Number 1, these are just some tips that will help you when you're really struggling with forgiveness, like I have myself. I go back to these. I must remember that as a disciple of Jesus, I am living right now in God's forgiveness.
Yeah.
His forgiveness is the model and method of why and how we are to forgive. Don't be like the man in Matthew 18:23. Now, let's look at Matthew 18:23-35. We'll read that for us.
I got it.
Matthew 18:23-35. Yeah, read it loud for us.
There, I think it was Matthew 18.
23-35, yeah.
23, okay. Therefore is the kingdom of heaven likened unto a certain king, which would take account of his servants. And when he had begun to reckon, one was brought unto him, which owed him 10,000 talents. But forasmuch he had not to pay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, and his wife and children, and all that he had, and payment to be made. The servant therefore fell down and worshipped him, saying, Lord, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. Then the Lord of the servant was moved with compassion, and loosed him, and forgave him the debt. But the same servant went out and found one of his fellow servants, which owed him 100 pence. And he laid hands on him, and took him by the throat, saying, Pay me that thou owest. And his fellow servant fell down at his feet, and besought him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. And he would not, but went and cast him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what he done, they were very sorry, and came and told unto their Lord all that was done. Then his Lord, after that he had called him, said unto him, O thou wicked servant, I forgave thee all that debt, because thou desirest me. You said to 30.
So 35.
35? Okay.
Yeah.
Shouldst not thou also have had compassion on thy fellow servant, even as I have pity on thee? And his Lord was wroth, and delivered him to the tormentors, till he should pay all that was due unto him. So likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you, if ye from your hearts forgive not everyone his brother their trespasses.
So Jesus tells this parable of a phenomenal parable. Someone has 10,000 talents is unimaginable number. It's like Jesus gave a number that the largest of which they could conceive, and said, "You're forgiven." Now that's the technical word. That is, I release to you this debt. I release to you. That is, I don't owe the debt again. They go, wow! I mean, there's no way I could have paid this off. And he goes out, and someone owes him a few dollars, and he goes, and chokes him to death. Give me every penny. See, that's what it's like for us. So we have been forgiven enormous, unimaginable debt, whether you feel it or not. But Jesus is saying that's true with God. When you're talking about the absolute origin of existence and holiness and purity and morality, we've been forgiven an overwhelming amount of debt. It's crazy to think that we would, for a second, try to withhold forgiveness of someone else. And it seems to be the point of the parable. And if because we don't have time, but I hope you'll look up the rest of these verses I have listed here. Colossians 2:13, 3:12-13, 1 John 2:12. These are examples of us having been forgiven. If you're a Christian, if you're Christians, you're in a state of forgiveness right now. A state of grace. So that's one of the reasons why we like to forgive other people is I'm in it. I kind of see it sometimes as like it's pouring down rain, I get under an umbrella and I go, this is what it's like not to be poured on every second all the time. And someone goes, hey, can I get in there? No! Boom! Wait a second. It was a gift to get in the first place. Come on in. So it doesn't make it instantaneous, overnight, but it is a good motivation. Remember, I am right now, as a Christian, in God's forgiveness. Number 2, I'm going to go a little fast on this because of time. 2, I encourage you, remember how you too are not flawless. Newsflash. You too have sinned, and perhaps in huge ways, to others. Even though you may not have done this thing that was done to you, you are not more righteous than the other person. You and the other person are both in need of God's grace. And that often can help us get over the hump of wanting to hold on to resentment. We realize, and it's difficult when we go, yeah, but I didn't do that, what he or she did to me. And I know that's difficult, but it really helps us to pause for a second and say, I realize I too also have needed other people to forgive me. So I get what's going on a little bit. 3, as disciples of Jesus, quite frankly, we must forgive. It is a direct moral duty and moral commandment of Jesus to his disciples. And to prove it to you, look at the Bible verses. Look at Matthew 6:12 and then 14 and 15, and you know that. Well, you should know that. Well, 6:12. It's there in the text, Matthew 6:12, right there in the middle of page 5. And who look up Matthew 18:21-22, and Colossians 3:12-13. So you have Matthew 6:12. What does it say?
And forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors.
Forgive us our debts as, or to the degree that we have forgiven those other people. That's exactly right. And my own view is not that Jesus is asking disciples to necessarily say, forgive us. That's not I don't think it's the point. The point is, make us forgiving people. Make us forgiving people. Forgive us as much as, to the degree that we're doing other people. So it's a challenge for us to be forgiving people. So that's my view of that, and a lot of New Testament scholars, whatever that's worth. I don't think the point is saying you need to beg forgiveness all the time. It's not that. And then he says in verse 14 to 15,
For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses.
that's pretty stinking explicit to me. I don't have a way to do any dancing around that exegetically.
No.
People try. But if you don't forgive, he won't forgive you. And I, like many interpreters, see that to mean that is in general. If you're the kind of person who likes to hold grudges, God will hold one against you. Period. 18, 21, and 22. Anybody have that one?
I got it.
Okay, 18, 20, go ahead.
Then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times? Jesus said unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7.
70 times 7. We have evidence in the later rabbinic material that they said 3 times was really graceful to forgive a person. So for Big Pete to say 7 times, most preachers go, bull, this is a dumb idiot. The odds are very high. Peter's giving a big high number, like 7 times? Like, whoa, that's gracious. And 7 also is complete, whole. Jesus just gave the spades. I tell you, basically forever, 70 times 7.
Yeah.
So the point, it seems to be again, don't be the person who's counting ways until, okay, this time I'm no longer going to forgive you. Be a kind of person who's not looking for ways to hold a grudge. Don't be the kind of person who's looking for ways to hold on to a grudge. And there are a lot of people who do like to hold on to grudges. It puts them in a one-up position. They feel superior, and they're looking for ways to hold a grudge. Now remember, when he says forgiveness, that's not the same as reconciliation. I'm going real quickly because I don't want to read this. I'll have you read it. Colossians 3, 12 to 13. Colossians 3, 12, 13.
Put on then as God's chosen one, all in the love, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgive each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive.
As he's forgiven you, you must also forgive. So Jesus says it, and Paul says it, and you can give some other examples. Good. Those few passages there in Colossians 3, 12 to 13, those little condensed sayings are so powerful when I think about the life of the Christian community. If we all treated each other like that, and one of my favorite passages is also the end of Romans 12, most of Romans 12, really, all of it. But it's so condensed. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good, outdo one another and showing honor. That means just boom, 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 boom.
It's an ethic.
It's
an ethics.
it's just boom, boom, boom. And it's so encouraging me and challenging because I thought, man, that's it. This is a blueprint. If a community treats you like that, it's amazing. So I remember I'm in the state of forgiveness if I'm a Christian, and that I'm a sinner too. So I get that. They're a sinner, I'm a sinner. We're on the same page with that. Even though the sin might have been different in degree. 3, I must forgive. Now, you might not have to, my view, and you don't have to do it my way, my goodness. But I said this back in the morality studies that you want to hear. My view is that, and I think this is the best way to understand the New Testament, I think. And that is, when it comes to morality and moral duty, the first thing I try to have is what we call character formation or virtue ethics. So, does that ring a bell for those who are here?
Yes.
So I try to make decisions that form my character. And I think, we have a list of moral values, which one should I pick? That's my moral duty. In this moment, which note do I play? What's the music? And in most of my life, on my good days and good moments, I think consciously and sometimes unconsciously, what forms my character, of course, as a Christian, to be like Jesus? What helps me more like Jesus? Because character and virtue ethicists argue, and I do too, that character is formed, all the way back to Aristotle, it's formed by habit. It's a kind of habit. And habits form by doing them, and then doing them again, and doing it again. And so if one time I'm a little forgiving on you stepped on my foot, it's a little easier to forgive next time. A little easier. If I'll hold a grudge, it's a little easier to hold a grudge next time. If I lie right now and get away with the lie, it's a little easier to lie next time. And that's how these things build. And so my point is, what I typically do is, that's how I decide what to do. When my character is deficient, or I'm immature, I go to deontological ethics. Now, don't worry about that is to say, there's a rule. And people are, you're a rule legalist. No, that's not what deontology means. It means there's some moral obligation, like do not murder, do not steal, do not lie. And then the third thing will be a consequentialist. What is the most good, or what's the impact going to be based on the consequentialist ethics? So in my own life, I'm just telling you, this is my pattern. I bring this up because a lot of the time, forgiveness falls to number 2 for me. A lot of times, because in my life, I have been so devastatingly hurt by people I trusted and loved that I don't have enough in my character yet to go, of course I'm going to forgive you. The only thing that has compelled me to work on forgiveness, the only thing really is number 3 here. That is, Jesus says you need to do it. And he's my boss. Period. Whether I like it, whether I don't like it, regarding my feelings, who gives a rip. And when I say he's my Lord, it's over. It's not over for discussion. And so, because I love him and he loves me, he cares for me. And I trust that Jesus knows what he's talking about. And if he says it's good to forgive, then he's right. And so there are other times, though, it's easier in my character, oh yeah, I can do it. But depending on the severity of the offense against me, I go, okay, he said I got to do it. He said I got to do it. Now, that's not going to be your problem, but I'm just telling you, me personally, when I read this one, I wrote it, I thought, I can think of people for whom the only reason I had forgiven them or working on it is because he said so. If he didn't say so, I go, look, never mind. Mm-hmm. That's I go. Okay, I'll move on. Amen. Thank you for sharing that. Several things stood up to me, but particularly when you said, the first thing God told me when I was a Christian was you need to forgive her. And I was saying, I've heard that story many times to people who come to Christ. One of the first things they hear is, you got to work on blank. In other words, it's not just, I feel happy. It's a commandment. And it's usually a commandment to do the thing that's the thing I don't want to do, but for a lot of people, which tells me more and more that's the kind of thing God would say, like Jesus said. So I appreciate that. The healing He's helped bring to you. I appreciate that. Good. Number 4, move on. Is that okay? Anything else? Why forgive? Resentment or unforgiveness is an internal wound. Resentment is bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. It's like an internal sickness that damages you. The resentment and bitterness that exists with unforgiveness causes much danger to us physically, spiritually. People often feel as if there's a barrier between them and God. That's a very common one. I don't feel like God answered my prayer. A lot of times, like, why is that? And deep down, they've got this deep-seated resentment towards someone. Mentally, emotionally, baggage doesn't go away if you don't resolve them. Not forgiving is paying a life sentence for a crime you didn't commit. When I heard that, or a version of that, I don't know, a year, decades ago, that upset me for reading. That's exactly right. Why would you go to prison for something you didn't do? But that's what resentment does. You pay the price for the anger and resentment. The other person will receive whatever God wants to give them. But if you don't forgive, the person wins twice the time you were hurt and the lifetime of anger you keep with you. Don't let them win twice. And don't pay the price for a crime you didn't commit. They win over and over and over and over in our rage and our obsession and our compulsion. They're winning every day as we relive the trauma. That doesn't make everything go away overnight, but it sure helps motivate for me a why. It's like, dadgummit, I was hurt already. I don't want to keep re-hurting. I don't want him to hurt or keep hurting me over and over. That helps. And I'm telling you, resentment leads to all kinds of literal physiological problems. You go to the doctor, high blood pressure, depression, loss of appetite, hair turning red, it's crazy. I didn't say that. They can call it is an internal wound, and I hope you see it as an internal wound, because it is. The 5th thing of the why is time alone will not heal that, so you need to process the hurt now. That's a good motivation for why. Analogy, you receive a massive laceration on your leg and begin bleeding profusely. Your body goes into shock, adrenaline is released in your bloodstream, you get tremors and begin to feel lightheaded. You walk around like nothing happened. You pass out. When you wake up, people keep pointing out your massive wound. Deborah says, look, you ready to do something about that fast? Nah, give it time, it'll be okay. It's alright. It's cool. What up? Just want attention? That's normal. When we are hurt, we receive an emotional psychological wound that is bleeding. The symptoms that prove you have a wound are irritability, denial, resentment, hatred, anger, lack of sleep, depression, addiction, compulsive behaviors, on and on and on. These are God-given signs that we need to stop and heal a wound. Say it this way, those physiological symptoms and emotional symptoms are like, quote, passing out, in my analogy. And then you wake up from it. You go, something ain't right, and give it time. And that's what resentment does. Time doesn't, so working on forgiveness helps you move on. It helps, just give it time, it's silly. It depends on the level of the wound, okay, but in general, serious ones, time alone doesn't heal it. Forgiveness is for you. You shouldn't wait around the person to come and beg for forgiveness. You do not need the other person to feel sorrow or repentance in order for you to forgive. And I get asked that question a lot. Should I wait for the person to say, I'm so sorry, please forgive me? No.
Right.
Don't wait.
Right.
Because that's not even biblical. You don't necessarily wait on that. You need to wait. You don't need to wait. If they do come ask forgiveness, woo, that's great. But you don't need to wait on that. You practice forgiveness because what? That's what Christians do. It heals you, all kinds of reasons. The other person never even has to know you forgive them. If you want to tell them, that's your choice, but it can't be because you want them to be embarrassed or they're going to fall down the knees in repentance and shame, oh Lord. If you do that, you're doing it for the right reason. You're doing, I'm telling you, I'll say it one more time. I'm saying it fast because I'm just reading the paragraph. But if you do that, I ask that question too. Should I go tell them I forgave them? Always ask, why do that? What's the expectation? If you deep down, even a small part of your heart really says, I really wanted to say, you're right, I was wrong, they start crying, whatever, that means you still need something from the person. And forgiveness means you don't need any more anything. You don't need any food because you're full. I didn't want a snack. But if you want a snack, you still need something. So get filled up on Jesus and a Christian community, a therapist, work through all of those wounds, get your belly all full, metaphorically speaking, and don't go for a snack. So they do not need to know you forgave them. John.
It's difficult for me to forgive someone close to me for hurting someone else who is close to me.
Okay.
That makes it a little difficult. I'd rather they had hurt me directly than.
So if I heard you correctly, it's difficult for you to forgive someone who who hurt someone else.
It's difficult for me to forgive someone when that person is close to me, but they have hurt someone else who's also close to me. So both parties are close to me, but one hurt the other.
Gotcha. Both parties are close to you, but one hurt the other
That's
person.
correct.
And that's
It's a
difficult.
little difficult for me to process.
It is difficult. It is difficult, brother. Just like Brock said last week, it's extra difficult to forgive loved ones and close friends and people. It is, and that's normal. We have a greater attachment to them, and it's more difficult. So it's good to own that. That helps you start work. It helps process the forgiveness to go, I have a bigger hurdle than last time.
And that's remember that Jesus forgave a lot more than I'm being asked to forgive. So
Jesus did forgive a lot more than you're asked to forgive. That's exactly right. And you just said that. And I should have said this. I should have written this. I should have composed it. When I put the why about Jesus has forgiven us and we're in a state of forgiveness, that's not for guilt. And so even now when I'm telling you, you're right, Jesus did forgive us more than whatever it is, I guarantee you Jesus has forgiven us more for whatever your loved ones or whatever it did to you. But it's really important to understand that is not to be used as a guilt message. The reason why is guilt messages lead to shame. And it's a way to stunt growth and healing. It's like saying, and this is what benefit of the doubt, well-intentioned Christians say that kind of stuff to other Christians quickly. Man, I've been hurt by my loved ones. Say, brother, sister, they really hurt me. And they go, well, Jesus forgave you for more. That doesn't help. It just does not help in the moment. That's not, and I'm going to go that little bit, how to be a friend to people who need to process forgiveness. So these are not supposed to be guilt messages, just true beliefs to help us have motivation.
But it helps me to remember that.
It does. Well, it helps you remember that. It helps me too. So
Put it in perspective.
put a perspective. Thank you. I like that word too. And that's a proper way to use these beliefs. Perspective, not guilt. To use an analogy, if I've got a big, for some of the people I've had to forgive, and some I'm still working on. Some are small hurdles, some are huge hurdles, and I'm down here looking up. When I see the big hurdle, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I forget it, because what they did to me is so offensive. It's so painful. When I hear these things about why, the point is to look down, you're a dirty, rotten, shameful loser for not wanting to forgive them. That doesn't help anybody. The why helps us perspective. Say, wait a second, the journey's worth it. Because why? And I'll go this in a little bit. So when I'm approving what you're saying, I don't want you to hear me using that as a guilt, as a hammer. You're right, Jesus gave you, sinner. Though it's true, it's not for guilt. Jesus never used it as a guilt message. You walk around, Peter, I'm about to forgive you. Maybe some fish. Ah, what's a man going to do to get a fish fry?
Not very loving.
Hurry up. See, it was never used as a weapon. And Christians can use it as weapons, whether they intend to or not, and we don't want to do that.
Right.
I'm going to move on quick because of time. Is it okay? So it is for you, but I do want that to sink in, sisters and brothers. Let it sink in. It's for you. What I mean is, it's healing and healthy and good for you. And there's nothing wrong. Look, there were people I had forgiven. I go, I'm glad I forgave them. Good for me. I was hurt. I was not arrogant. It's good for me. Congratulations. And Jesus is happy with that because he said, do it. If my kids clean the room after I say clean the room and they go, I did a good job. You dirty, rotten, arrogant sinner. No, I'm saying, you're right. You did a good job. You ought to be proud of yourself. You obeyed your daddy. That's good. It was for you. And they go, I feel better. That was good. I mean, I know you told me to, Dad. But I'm glad I did it. That really benefits me. I can see my toys that I said I didn't have. Same thing with me. It's okay. It's for you. We don't have to wait on the other person to come beg for forgiveness. Some people wait years. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting. If he doesn't come say he's sorry, forget it. Well, there you go. You keep on resenting it. But yeah.
Toxic people won't even know they did anything
Sure,
wrong.
that's
They would never admit it.
Toxic people won't even know what they've done. Oh, sister, preach.
Or to do like, if you apologize first, then I'll apologize. I hate that.
Yeah, I'll apologize first, and then they don't have to apologize. And that's something we talked about on page 4, I think it was. Yeah, page 4 in the middle paragraph, these inauthentic forgiveness. Being the first one, jumping to it too quickly. And that's very, very common in relationships, particularly spousal relationships. There's always one person who has more power in a relationship. Always. I'm doing a marriage workshop this week, and I'm going to say, I guarantee you, someone in a relationship does. And I'll say, who is it? And instantly they'll say, him, her, they know, right there. And it's a rule, whoever has the least amount of need controls the relationship. And that's often why the person who has the most amount of need says, I'm sorry, the fastest. Because for them, the anxiety of the relationship breakdown or separation is way too powerful. I'm sorry, whatever it is, I'm sorry. But when it doesn't have a great need, they'll let it ride or let it whatever. And that works in friendships, spousal relationships, what else? Yeah.
I think though, like something that I've regularly been thankful to God for is I feel He's given me an ability to forgive quickly. I realize that I haven't been through the trauma that other people have been through as well. But I think we can also have a genuine, quick forgiveness that is quick and it is Christ-centered, but it's genuine as well, without being like foolhardy quick or that sort of thing. And I think that's not out of being needy as far as anxiety and that sort of thing goes. It's just helpful you being able to practice forgiveness as well.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. To repeat for the camera, for Facebook and for the podcast, that's right. So it is certainly possible to be able to have a disposition of it's easy to forgive a wide range of offenses, and that doesn't mean you're needy. Absolutely. And that's not what that's not what I'm implying. There are people who do forgive too quickly, and it's usually why people are quick to say, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, are the ones who have the greatest need. And that's different from what I'm saying is people who forgive so quick. And that happens the same thing with needy people. It's okay, it's no big deal. That's what children do, right? As soon as we're hurt. It's okay, Daddy. It's okay, Mama. They have forgiven immediately. Because children are terrified of relationship separation. But that's not to say or imply that every time a person can forgive very quickly, it just means they're needy. Yeah, I'm not trying to, thank you for that clarification.
And say it can sometimes be fear and just trying to not make waves.
Yeah, it can be fear and not make waves. Which means, again, the fear is a sign of being needy. You need something from the other person. You need stability, safety, and whatever. And one who has stronger needs to be met, or they're more hungry than the other person, usually it's okay, it's no big deal, no problem. Yeah. And that's exactly how relationships end up in an addictive pattern. They get beat all the time, or they lose all their money, and it's because usually it's the wife who is such a needy position.
Usually enjoying that manipulation.
They might enjoy the manipulation. Some are so terrified to get out, they don't know what to do. I've asked gals before, why do it? And they'll say, what else am I going to do? But part of us, they really can't picture. I go, well, anyway. But it was they can't see if they're fishing the sea whatsoever. But this horrible relationship, they can't see past it. But on that, number 7, another motivation for why. I'm just trying to help you out here. Motivation for why. Don't forget, your past does not define who you are. You are not in control over everything. Usually, including when someone hurts you deeply. You can't control the event. It is in the past. You can control your response to the event. That is totally under your control. You gain your power back from the event by taking control of your healing. You are defined by how you live now. You are not defined by how you formerly lived or what happened to you. The past got to us to this point. Now we control what we do with our past. And when I learned that fact, how many years ago, I'm telling you that helped change my life. Let me write a little, I do this often. Let's say that dot is that PE, that past event, whatever it is that hurt you. And let's assume for a second you were a victim that hurt you. As time goes on, the farther away you get from that past event, it's still there. And obviously, but it's there and it's stuck there. We live on, we keep going on. We cannot change the event that happened. But that's not just what happens in life. What happens in life is not an event happens, you move on with life. What happens in every human being, it happens in relationships, where I'm about to say a marriage workshop this weekend, happens in relationships, and it happens to individuals. What humans do is, after an event happens, we subconsciously and or consciously, that's very important to remember, subconsciously is usually where it happens, the part where you didn't realize you did it. And that is, we attribute meaning to it, or significance to it. And that's this little halo. It's not on the other side of the event, it's as we move forward. We develop from the significance, we develop something very important in life, and those are beliefs. We form beliefs almost always because of an event. Now these beliefs, they might be true. If I put my hand on the stove, it will burn me. That's a belief I developed. Sometimes it can be instantaneous. And you might not think in that moment, that burned me. I'll never do that again. You might not consciously think that, but subconsciously, outside of some kind of disorder, you do believe that from then forth. In other words, most kids don't go back without some kind of disorder. Beliefs can be true, and they can be stinking false. The problem is this. Very few people ever analyze their beliefs. And so because we develop beliefs, they take with us until the next event happens, and the next event happens. And over time, beliefs keep forming over and over and over and over. Most of the beliefs we form in life are formed in childhood. So the very next time, 28 years later, you get near a stove, you still don't touch it. because what happened when you were 4. The very first time you were molested as a child, when you're 58, it doesn't matter. There was a girl I knew who was molested by a family friend, it almost always is, and before he molested her, he popped popcorn. So for a long time when she smelled popcorn, every time she did this panic attack, anxiety attack. So as years go by, now I think she's a little more better now, but for years it just put her into an absolute anxiety attack, and it should have. Now why is that? Well, just give it time. That's ridiculous. So that's the grievingness is the point. But so like that when it comes to forgiveness and wounds, I'm going somewhere with that. This happens in life all the time. And in therapy, one of the things I work with people, there's never been a time that I can think of ever in a therapy session where we don't get very, very quick to the roots of what they believe. Because because your feelings are formed off of your beliefs. You can think something. You can have other kinds of facts all you want, like 2 + 2 = 4, this is made out of wood. But beliefs are quite different. They can be true or false. And false beliefs lead to all kinds of bad things that happen. Okay, the bright side is this. This is really, really, really bright side because it's really cool. And it's amazing how I'm convinced God designed it. Where our brains can't, outside of weird amnesia stuff, we don't forget or can't forget, particularly if it's traumatic. Say a past event is a big dot. We can't go back and relive that. We can't. But what we can do is reinterpret it.
Okay.
We can reinterpret the event. And psychotherapy, particularly and other therapy devices, help us go back to the event that caused the pain and then re-experience it, reformulate it, reframe it, the different words they use, to form different beliefs. And that helps us knock out the false nonsense. What's so glorious, and let that sink in, if it hasn't already, that means 83 years ago, you can go back to the event and say, now that I think about it, that's where I learned to distrust men. Back then, that's where I learned to hate Mexicans. That's these subconscious beliefs. That's when I learned that the world is not safe. It's because I was molested. That's when I learned the world's not safe because my house was broken into when I was 6 years old. That's when I learned it. That's when I first learned racism. That's when I learned that God isn't real. Because I associated God with Santa, they said Santa's not real. And that's when it first happened. That event is what put into motion something I've been carrying all this time. I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And so traumatic events can be, the belief system around it can be undone. It can be undone for almost all people. So I'm saying that on page 6 because it's a motivation for why, it seems to me, because that gives me tremendous hope. That the grief associated and the wounds associated with being a victim state, that forgiveness allows us to redefine that. Instead of holding resentment against it where I don't want to go back there ever and I just want to beat up the person or whatever, it allows me typically to change some belief system. And that includes forgiving, quote unquote, forgiving yourself, quote unquote, or quote unquote, forgiving another person. So this fights completely in the face. Those people say, hey, past the past, deal with it, you know? Hey, just who I am. They don't know anything about psychology, but that's false. It's not just the past is past, because beliefs are part of that past and those can be changed. I'm living evidence that this is true. I'm living proof. You're listening to a person, those who are.
I've experienced that myself in different times in my life.
You've experienced that yourself.
In different situations.
Different situations.
Kids at school, when I was young, my peers, I was no good at sports, I was a little shrimp, and they just persecuted me all the time. Now, even now, as an 80-year-old, when I walk down the street, see some junior high kids coming on the same block coming toward me, I just kind of want to cringe and hope they don't see me. Nowadays, they don't just to me really. It's just in my mind, I'm still afraid of it.
In your mind, you're still afraid.
Still.
So you learn the belief
I guess
is.
that belief system is still ingrained.
It is.
It's a bad one.
The fall, that's right. And so if you put that into a belief statement, what would it believe? Conscious, like that behavior, cowering down the street because teenagers are coming, junior high, Because I believe what? Teenagers are.
Same thing.
They do the same thing. They're going to do the same, which is what?
My logic tells me they won't, but it's
Sure.
part of me says they will.
That's it.
Fears they will.
That's exactly right.
It's illogical, but it's there. I mean,
Right,
it
it's
makes
not-
sense that they-
Yeah, it's non-rational.
And underestimate myself.
I know they get bogged down for my own sake, but I always use the analogy of an iceberg. This top part is the rational. Or, to use a different term, that's the conscious. That's the part we think about. This huge area beneath are beliefs. And that's almost always subconscious. And healing comes almost always, and this can be a lot of work, and that's a lot of times, if you're not very, very good at being self-observant, you need a therapist to help you think this through, some kind of counselor, because you want to put your head down beneath this water and bring these things up and go, is that true or false that all teenagers are dangerous? And that's where you say, well, my head, I know that's just silly. But, and it's the but. And I'll do real quickly. What I find in people, I know, but this is so, I say this, it's just so important. I'm trying to set people free here. When you tell people these kinds of things like, Jesus has forgiven you, or he's got new life, or he can set you free, the response everybody always gives is, if they're struggling with anything, is, yeah, I know. You don't have to be perfect. God doesn't care. You don't have to struggle with perfection. Yeah, I know, of course not. Everybody does that. Of course they do, because that's the top. I know, of course not, I know that. But I'm looking at a person who's struggling with perfectionism. I'm looking at a person who's struggling with guilt. I'm looking at a person who's struggling with shame. I know. And they don't even admit this part. And so that's why in therapy, typically you don't start with going, here's your problem, you believe blank. They go, no, I don't. Because what they mean is, I don't think that way. That's not what I said. That's not what therapists say. What I said is, that's what you believe. And I know I'm right. And so you usually got to go through a series of a whole bunch of questions. Someone I remember meeting here at the church. One time, like, well, just tell me what you think. I know what you think. I'll ask a question. Just tell me what you think. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. Because I can tell you, but until you put your head beneath the water yourself, and I don't know for sure either, but when you've been counseling for a long time, you start seeing a lot of patterns.
Yeah.
So my point is, this is common and normal and human behavior. It's just the way it is. And God, by his great grace and help my therapist, if we need it, can help us reinterpret these events, get the beliefs out, and then change. And I appreciate your example about, and childhood all these years ago, teenagers in your mind, this is my vocabulary, not yours, but if I paraphrase this, you've developed the belief teenagers are dangerous. Teenagers will shame you. Teenagers will embarrass you. And so, therefore, because you do believe that, it forces a physiological response of powering down. And there are ways to change that belief and change the behavior, but we don't have time tonight to talk about that. But that's good news. That's my point is, that's good news, right? That's all my point here, number 7 is, the past does not define you, right? No matter what was done to you, no matter what. I'm sorry to move on, but I need to. Is that okay? Unless there's a big, sorry about that, Susan. Yeah?
That's okay.
Okay. How do I do it? Well, there's a lot of hows. And I appreciate several things you said, Linda, earlier. And I love the fact when you said, pray. And I'm going to go there as well. I always start out with this first one, which is it really worth resenting? That's always a good first question. Like, something's just not worth it. So if you're being a little prima donna, own it. Now, here's the problem. A lot of Christians go there first, period, stop, they're done. I'm overreacting, I should just forgive. No, that's not the point. You might really have been wounded, and it's something you really need to work on forgiving them. Like those teenagers all those years ago, John. You have work to work on the healing of the wound that they caused you. And so sometimes it is worth it. But if it's not, try to be honest enough with yourself. Is this really worth holding on to? Is it really worth it? I mean, if someone else came, this is what I do to myself. I will say, Sonny, if someone came to me and said, I've got this problem, and they describe exactly what I'm going through, would I go, whoo, that's a big one. I'm so glad you came and talked to me. Let's pray. Oh, it's going to take years. Or would I go, sugar dumpling. That ain't worth it. If I were you, I'd let that junk go. If that's what I would say to that person about the exact same situation, there's my sign. And Lane and I do this for each other. If I'm not real sure, I'm on the fence about it, and I go, okay, I'll tell the story, and she goes, that makes sense. I'd be very upset about that too. Or she goes, no, and then vice versa. If I go, maybe let that you're being over, it's because probably you're tired and other things that go on in your body, and it's been a rough week or whatever it is, that's not worth it. You're overreacting. She go, okay. And I say, here's some chocolate, and she comes. I'm just kidding. But she does all the time. But like, see, we help each other. You don't have to be married for that. You have good friends. A therapist say, is this worth really processing deeply or not? And it doesn't mean they're perfect. It just, but it's a good test. Sometimes they're not worth it. To choose to begin the process of forgiveness. At some point, you have to decide consciously, top of the iceberg, to begin the process of forgiveness. Some people, like David said, they get to it quicker. There's the hump, the hurdle's not that big. Awesome. But if you're not that good at it, you got to be deliberate, be focused, own it. I need to start this journey. I need to do it. Well, David, why do I do that? Go back and read those pages. I gave you a whole 7 reasons for why, and maybe you can make up some more. So just start it. At least own that. I wrote that because, one, it's true. 2 is I have met people, I think well-intentioned people, who say, blank happened to me, and I will never forgive them for that. I will never forgive them that. When a person says, I will never forgive them that, they haven't done number 2. And if they say, I've never forgiven them ever, and they call themselves a Christian, at some point I'm going to bring up the great disparity between I will never forgive them versus Jesus commanded us to, which means you're obeying your own conscience more than what our Lord said in that. And I don't say it just like right off the bat, but I'm saying at some point we're going to come to that. And so the Christian thing to do is at least begin the process. That means by deciding it. 3, you need to confront the action that offends you. Look right at it, right at the event, right at the pain. You'll want to avoid it because it hurts, but you're not. You got to relive it while allowing any feelings to surface. Now that's why you might need a really good therapist, a mature friend, and that's this past event on the board, this PE. That's where, if it's a serious issue, you're struggling with forgiveness. I'm past stepping on my toe stuff. This is big deal stuff. You will need to go back. You will need to go back. There's no other way you're going to have to go back to confront that action in a safe environment. So you're going to name it directly at the event. No more looking away. Be specific about what happened. Name it, take note of every offense that occurred, let it all surface, and as it does, label the evil that happened to you, say it. It's difficult for a lot of people to say that when their parents hurt them, because the older generations, you're not allowed to think poorly of your parents. You're bombarded with guilt messages. I'm doing the best I can. Daddy didn't have much. Mama was trying her best on the farm. We have all these guilt messages. And then they talk about their parents. They won World War II for you and World War I. My daddy, and they're just perfect. And for some people, it's so difficult just to name the offense. I've had many people in my office, many people over the years, say, but they're good parents. They're good. And I go, I bet they were, except for all these horrible things they did for you. Well, they tried their best. And so right away, they give me all, and I counter every one of them. I don't care. Well, they did their best. No, they didn't. Even if they did, it wasn't good enough for you. Well, they meant well. Okay, it wasn't good enough. In other words, I'm trying to be the right voice of reason for them that they've never experienced. And after all that pushback and all those guilt messages, there's always this final breakdown of sobbing. That's what's supposed to happen. We name the offense. Those teenage boys, we name it. They made fun of me. They did this. Everything I can remember. They did this, and that hurts. And that's exactly why I'm struggling with forgiveness. Because it hurt. They offended me. They hurt me. They ashamed me. They embarrassed me. And that's what it is. David, you're not forgetting. I've already dealt with that. It's page 1. No, that's not how you heal from serious wounds. Then you grieve it. And that's a whole study on grief, which I've already done. If you don't allow yourself to feel the pain, name it and grieve it, you will not heal. You cry, you journal, you talk about your sadness. You don't go get drunk. You don't visit prostitutes, get crack, take the pills, shop all in one. That does not heal it. It doesn't heal it. It's going to make the pain go away for a little bit, but it does not heal them. It doesn't. By analogy, if I got a big fat thorn in my leg, I walk around, it's all blue and it's sobbing, I just keep on taking the high drugs and I do whatever I can to get as high as I can or numb the pain. Guess where that stick still is? It's still in my leg. Until I look down right at it and go, somebody, look at your leg. I don't look. Look, hey, my leg did the best it could. You know, it meant well. Look at your leg. Give it time. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You don't have faith. That's your problem. Look at your leg. No, I'm past that. It's been years.
Yeah.
Why are you taking all those pills? Why are you trying to numb it? I'm not numbing it. It's look down. If I look down, it's going to hurt. Now you got to just pull it out. Now let's go back to when it happened in the first place. That's how you pull it out and then get healing and then move on. And that's what grieving is. You've got to confront it, be specific, and grieve it. Give yourself permission to forgive. Give yourself emotional permission to forgive. Control your internal dialogue. This means that you cannot condemn your feelings, your thoughts, or beliefs about the process. For example, these are the biggies. I hear this stuff all the time. Well, just get over it. I know, David. I should just get over it. I know it's stupid being bring it up. That's ridiculous. Or, I know I should be over this by now. Or, I know I'm just so stupid to be feeling this way. I know it's wrong. Or, I shouldn't feel this right now because good Christians forgive and forget. I mean, I've heard so many of these. These are nothing but manipulation messages to get us to feel guilty for feeling pain. And they're false. False. It's crucial to remember that feelings are not anti-Christian. Feelings are our responses to our perceived beliefs, like the temperature on a thermostat. And I've said that over and over, and I'll always say it. You don't judge it. It's 76 degrees. How dare you? Feelings are amoral and should not be judged. Feeling upset, anger, blah, blah. Don't ever feel guilty about feeling negative feelings, ever, ever. You just don't. So if you say, I'm struggling with forgiving, own that. I'm going to give myself, David, it's okay if you let it go. And as soon as you start saying, it's okay to start forgiving, you're going to start feeling sadness or vulnerability or all kinds of pain and rage, and then you start addressing those feelings that came out. That's part of the forgiving process. And then you give yourself time. That's the last one, on the bottom of the page here. Give yourself time to heal. Take the time. Your psyche will know when the wound is healed. It's not your job to, is this what I should be feeling right now? Is this what I should? Is this bad or good? Is this bad or good? Just feel it. Feel it and deal with it as it comes out. Give yourself permission to grieve. Keep telling the same things mentioned above. I'm not going to pay a life sentence for the crime. I'm doing this for me. It's not for X. I also need forgiveness of God. It's the Christian thing to do. Whatever it takes to keep processing, give myself time. If the rage and sadness comes up and you're in the middle of Dylan's checkout line, it's rage. Okay, give yourself a timeout, but you literally say it in your mind. You go, not right now. Now you talk to your first person. You would say, Pat, not right now. When I get home, I'm going to revisit that, right? Sonia might say, not right now. Sonia, you're talking to yourself. I'll get to you. I'm going to address you. But what most people do is they don't say, you have permission. What they say is, you shouldn't be feeling that. You shouldn't be feeling that. You should get over it. That's condemnation, judgment. You'll never heal that way. You don't. You say, I hear you. I'm feeling angry right now. I'm feeling sad. Here comes those teenagers. I'm feeling scared again. I'm feeling anxious. Own that. You go, yeah, I'm feeling sad or anxious or tense or scared, whatever your words are. I'm feeling that because a long time ago I was hurt. What you don't say is, that's just silly. I know better. I know I shouldn't feel that way. That's going to help you be stunted in your growth. Instead, you own it, you name it, and you nurture yourself. You go, right now I can't start crying because the teenagers are coming. Or I don't want to cry right now. It's a beautiful day. Later on, I'll bring this up to myself. Me and God are going to handle this. You acknowledge it. You give yourself grace. If you need to postpone it, like I'm giving examples of postponing it, then you do that. If you're at home and you're fine, there's no need to postpone it, let loose. Feel that pain, wound, sadness. Go for it.
I've got a lot of worse issues than that.
Got a lot worse to? Okay, well, that's another way to condemn yourself. But if you, whatever it is, you might need a non-judgmental friend or therapist who can help you. So don't ever be ashamed to receive counseling. God can bring great healing through someone else. Before I move on, something I didn't add, and I should have added it. I think I was doing that by implication in some of the places that I didn't. And I should have added it now that I'm seeing in black and white some more. And that's exactly what Linda said earlier, quite frankly. Because Jesus, he says explicitly in Luke chapter 6 to pray for those. Pray for your enemies, bless them, do not curse them. And there is a lot of power. Now, in that context, he doesn't say, and that's how you forgive them, and so forth. But he does say, is what we already read, which is, how many times we got to forgive them? 7 times? Remember Big Pete said that? So we're told to forgive those who hurt us, our enemies, in that sense. But if you want to probably decompose a note here also it said, praying for the people you're trying to forgive can be very powerful. It can be powerful. God can, and I hope you assume, because I sure do, through this whole study, it's not like we don't pray. We pray all the stinking time for grace and strength, as I do at the end of every study. I always ask God for the strength and courage. But it can be very powerful to pray for the person who offended you. God, help them know your love. Help them, maybe they're toxic, maybe help change, inspire them, help change their heart and mind, and so forth. The reason why I don't start with that one is this reason. It doesn't mean it's bad, but I have to nuance it so much. And that is, I don't start with pray for your enemy, is because, in my experience, Christians, well-intentioned, use that as a guilt message. So it can be used as a forgive and forget. Just pray for them. Just pray for them. That's your problem. You just need to pray for them.
Yeah.
And that is not good. And so I tend to say, well, that's not what we mean. The second thing is this, and this is another common reason. I don't have to nuance it. If you pray for your enemy, if you're in a deep state of anger, resentment, or pain, it can be nothing but a way to obsess about what happened. And you'll baptize it with the language of, I'm just praying for them. I pray from morning, lunch, snacks, at dinner, the next morning. I stay in bed praying for them. You're just obsessing. You're just, and that means you're attached like a prison, like shackles. And so my encouragement always is, yeah, pray for them, but then watch yourself. See, are you able to pray and let it go? That is until later on, maybe. Or does it make you stir up such hatred or resentment and you feel like you're just now obsessing about them all the time? Well, then you're not really praying for them. You're just cycling through the trash, if that makes sense. So it's a difference. Yeah, go ahead before we wrap up here.
When you forgive someone, does that mean you can't visit it in your mind again, like the incident?
Great question. When you forgive someone, repeat this, when you forgive someone, does it mean you can't, revisit it in your mind?
Yeah, just think about the situation or I don't want to say analyze it because I guess.
Can you look on bottom page 4 for me? You missed that week.
I think I did.
That's all right, but it's a good question. If we forgive someone, does it mean I should never think about it? The answer is no, because it is not. Look back at number 3 at the very top. Christians are to forgive and forget, or kiss and make up. Well, that's nonsense. It is true, kind of, that we are able to forgive and let go of. We don't live in obsession in that sense, forget. But it's not true that we just get over it, and that's how usually that's used. Is just get over it. If you look down at the bottom of page 4, I like this analogy. You don't have to use this. I made it up. You can do. I use it like there's a boat on the water that keeps picking up hooks attached to other boats. I imagine our memory is kind of like this table here. It's a circle, and there are a bunch of piers, and those piers are these past events. And you're still in a state of resentment or deep woundedness when you recycle those memories in your mind and go, you follow me wherever I go. And I grab another one. And it slows us down. When we've healed, we're able to revisit those past memories. They might surface emotional pain. We might be a little sad. We might get terribly sad. But you've healed when you do not feel compelled to relive everything. That's different from therapy. That's a controlled environment where you're reliving it to change the beliefs so you can move on. When a person is obsessed about or hadn't forgiven, they're not doing that on purpose. They do it on accident. They feel compelled to revisit, and that's called obsession. They'll lie in bed at night, and I can't stop thinking about it. I have nightmares about it. That's not unhealthiness. That's because your mind, you're still so wounded. That's like the tugboat you grabbed along with you. By analogy I gave last time, Sonia recently lost her very lovely, awesome husband. For the rest of your life, when you think about that, you're not going to be, that's so good. There's never going to be a time that's happy that he's gone. And in fact, there's probably never going to be a time it's even neutral. But it'll be neutral enough such that you will be able to revisit those good memories. And the good memory might, remember that time that, it might make you smile and happy. You might start crying too. But you're able to relive it enough, and it's controlled, and you have the power to, as it were, another analogy, shut that chapter and go back to where you were off. Like the bookmark was back on the present day. When we've not healed, we get stuck there. The tugboat pulls it around, or it's like, I can't get out of that chapter. And I weep and I weep and I weep and I weep. Or if it's unforgiveness, I rage and I rage and I rage and I rage. And I can't seem to get out of it. Does that make sense? And that's the distinction. It's not that you should never feel feelings if you ever look at that chapter again. Yeah, unless you're some weird robot, you're going to relive some feelings about it, including when you've been hurt.
Yes.
If you fully process your pain and forgiveness of those teenage boys, if I were sitting with you one day and said, let's rethink about exactly what happened, you might say, I don't really want to do that. Well, that's okay. It doesn't mean you haven't forgiven them. Or if you relive it, you might go, yeah, I still get real sad when I think about that. That's normal too. It's just that if you said, I subconsciously dodge them on the streets and I can't stop thinking about it, or I'm having nightmares, or that means you've got some healing to do.
It affects the way I think about myself in all areas of my present life. A feeling of
It affects the way.
inferiority.
Right. It affects It affects the way you, would you say, think about your life today?
Myself.
About yourself.
And then people say I'm always shooting myself in the foot, so that's what I'm doing.
Very good. Shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I'm always bringing myself down and talking myself down. Well, I'm
Oh,
I do that in the office all the time.
yeah, you do it all.
I said, oh, no, I didn't. That took me too long, this and that. And I was on a paid job, they fired me. And I've been fired for several jobs because I am inferior. I am somewhat retarded. And I never could meet expectations in work or any other area, including my marriage. I'm like the guy who had an inferiority complex. He went to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist talked to him for a long time, asked him questions, and then he finally said, I hate to tell you this, sir, but you really are inferior.
Oh, no.
That's what I made up, and I think it fits.
Oh, no.
I made that up as a scenario. I think it fits me.
I'm sorry you believe that about yourself.
I can't help it.
Let me ask a question to the class now. Is that a true belief or a false belief?
I think
I know. Hold on one second. Let's try this one more time with that. You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe it. That's fine. But maybe for once you might want to hear this. Class, is that a true belief that John is inferior in every way, or is that a false belief? False. I know you don't believe it because you believed false things for so long. Who else could, I want you to hear this, brother, for whatever it's worth, I'm going to move on. Who else in this room is still struggling with having false beliefs? Look around, brother. And online, they're all raising their hands too. So I get it, and we get it, but that's a false belief. And
it
so,
proves itself out day after day.
no, it does not.
Am I living?
No, I hear what you're saying. It proves itself out as nonsense. That's false because you don't believe what you tell to me is not a belief on a specific issue. I failed at that. What you're doing is called generalization. I am a failure. I fail at all things. That's completely, utterly false. I know that because I've met you and I've seen you do duties in the office, and you do not fail at everything. That's demonstrably false. It's like you're saying, I do not have a mustache, and we all see that you do. It's demonstrably false. But there's more there, but I do hope Brother God can heal you from that. He can heal you and go back to all those past events of your job and marriage and help redefine those beliefs. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And we're out of time, so So, brother, I'm sorry you believe that about yourself, but that is false. It's false. You are not that way. You might need a friend. You might need a therapist. If you're that friend, it's the same thing as the grief, quite frankly. Be with them. If they're struggling with forgiveness, be with them. Sisters and brothers, this works both ways. If someone comes up to you, if I come up to Vanna, I say, Vanna, I need prayer because I'm really struggling forgiving whatever. Struggling forgiving Spencer. He just hurt my feelings. And I'm just really struggling forgiveness. And Vanna were to say, you just need to get over it. Have you had a faith? You know, have you told Jesus yet? David, why are you telling me this? You know you shouldn't be having this struggle. Any of those kind of stupid things that so many people say, I will never go to her probably ever again with those kind of struggles. Ever. That's not what I need. And vice versa is true. I want to be the kind of safe person. And I'm not really struggling with forgiving Spencer. He's the man. He can't possibly do it. Especially call him out all the time as an introvert. He loves this. This is his favorite. He feels he's talking to us. But if what we need to be is a safe place. Instead, what Vanna should do is, David, I'm so sorry that you're struggling with that. Tell me more if you want to. What's going on? Tell me about your pain. How have you been hurt? If there's time. Now, maybe we're in the line at Kroger too, or y'all Dillon's, whatever it is. Okay, well, hey, let's go home. Can you call me? Or tomorrow, let's have lunch and talk about it. And then you listen. I'm so sorry you're hurt. I'm so sorry you went through that. What's it been like for you? Listen. Be a safe. They don't need any judgmental. Well, that's just not good. They hear it already. Don't tell them how to feel. Don't tell me any of that stuff. And to reiterate one more time, me and Brock said this several times, I'm trying to emphasize this. Your job is not to tell them what to do, give them advice. Here's what you ought to do. Here's the first thing. No. What I say here in the bullet point is you can encourage change when it's really needed. And that's usually, listen, it's usually under severe instances. Like when someone's lost a spouse or a child or a loved one, and they really don't have stopped functioning on normal routines, like they haven't eaten in 2-3 days, they haven't showered, they haven't shaved, basic hygiene. I absolutely am convinced as a Christian, it's absolutely okay to say, hey, how's your appetite? Have you eaten lately? Let's go get some. I don't feel like eating, and I believe you. Let's don't trust our feelings. We gotta get some protein, basic. How about a protein shake? I'm not hungry. Okay, I'll go buy you a protein shake. You're not asking permission because you love them. They're not able in the fog of the pain to make those decisions. And I'm saying in those severe situations, you can make it for them as best as you can. That's very different from saying, here's your problem, you hadn't eaten enough food. All right, I'll talk to you later. That's not...
They might be wanting to feel the pain of being hungry at that time too.
They might want to feel the pain of hungry. Some people do. That's some reason why some people cut themselves and do all kinds of stuff. It's don't cut ourselves. You see their wrist? When are you doing that? If you don't have the tools for this, that is okay. You call a therapist. You get someone to call them for you. I mean, that's what you do. But in general, your job is not to jump to the advice train. I'm only giving some examples when it's real serious. And of course, you know your own boundaries, don't have transference. Look, there are times when people are going to tell you stuff. Let's say you've really struggled with a wound in your past, and you've had to work on forgiveness too, and they're struggling with the exact same thing, and it brings up so much pain. Just being hypothetical, if I had the same kind of problem of teenagers making fun of me, and I went to John and said, John, I need your help, brother. And he goes, what's going on? And I said, man, years ago, and I describe almost the same scenario, and then John starts racing, and he feels sad, and John, so perfectly okay to say, brother, I'm so sorry, that happened to me too, and unfortunately that triggers a lot of pain in me too, and I'm not the right person to help you on that because I'm afraid it brings up a lot of sadness in me too, and I'm not going to be for you what I need to be, but I'll help you do these other things. Just know your own limits and boundaries. And I can tell you some stories, John, of my own, of being made fun of for years of my life because I'm redheaded, because I'm white. All my life I was made fun of. So whatever it's worth, I can relate to some of that, a lot of it. I still am made fun of for that. Adults say it all the time. But I've mostly gotten over that. But I get that. Pray for them, serve them. If you're stuck in forgiveness, have you really prayed enough? Have you really grieved enough? Are you trying to hold on? All those kind of questions. I know we're a little bit over, but that's okay because this is the last night. Next week is Ash Wednesday, so we're finishing the study. So as we wrap up, is there anything about this issue from grief or forgiveness that we need to talk about now? Any questions or comments before we wrap up? And I'll be around after here for another 20 minutes or so. But anything the group you want to discuss together?
I'm going to give up resentment for Lent.
Give up resentment from that. Amen, brother. Amen, brother. Amen.